Hi, my name is Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss two developments really in the ongoing saga of the report into Russian interference that Boris Johnson has been suppressing for some months now. The first is that he has finally appointed some people for the Select Committee with his preference for the chair of that Select Committee, and it's that committee that will have to publish the report. And the second is the release of some information contained in the report via an expert witness to the investigation. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, a double whammy of news on the Russian report from this week. The first of which, as I say, the Prime Minister has decided that Chris Grayling should be the chair of the Intelligence Select Committee, whose job is to release that Russian report at last. Now, if you think you've heard that name before, Chris Grayling, you have. I've even talked about him earlier this week. He is quite simply the most incompetent minister to have served, if we can call it that, in recent memory, by any objective measure you'd like to use. He has single-handedly wasted at least £500 million of public money as Justice and then Transport Secretary. And when I say wasted, I don't mean spent it on policies that I think are harmful or just gave it to a load of billionaires in the way that I think most Conservative spending is wasted. I mean literally wasted in a way that even his own side cannot deny. That is money that was spent on things that never came to fruition. I can see why Boris Johnson likes him. Something of a kindred spirit, really, isn't he? And the Select Committee, of course, will take a few weeks to form. It's the Intelligence Select Committee, so therefore there has to be enhanced security checks for all the members. They are going to be privy to matters of national security, and then they will have to elect a chair. Now, the way it works is Boris Johnson gets to appoint 5 members of the 9-member committee. So Conservatives are going to form the majority of it. It is cross-party, but the Conservatives are going to form a majority of it. So if they can all agree that Chris Grayling should be the chair, then he will be the chair because they will have the majority. But after that, does that mean that we'll get the report at last? Don't count on it. No, we're not going to see this report until this government is well and truly gone. Something will be released, but it will either be redacted or heavily rewritten, mark my words. And for those who are thinking, come on, Phil, be reasonable. It's a security report. Of course, they're going to have to redact certain elements in the interests of national security. No, that's wrong. It's not a security report in that way. This is a report into a serious security issue, yes, but one that was always intended for publication. This report, as it was being written, was intended to be seen by members of the public. That means that that report needs to be seen by members of the public. Any sensitive material was already revised and removed. How do we know this? Because first of all, it was cleared by the Select Committee themselves, but second of all, much more importantly, it was cleared by the Cabinet Office last year. The Cabinet Office coordinates with our intelligence services to check for such things in any reports that might be sensitive. They cleared it as containing nothing untoward. So any redactions will be purely political. Any rewriting of it will be purely political. And it's against this background that there's been a rather tasty preview of what, well, I was going to say what will be released, but what won't be released with this government. One of the expert witnesses who fed into the report has allowed The Guardian to publish his testimony, which was confidential up until now, and would have remained so if the author presumably had any confidence that the report would ever see the light of day. I will link I'll put a link to the article in the description below if you want to read all the gory details, because what I want to do is to preview it and focus essentially on the implications, well, for the country, quite frankly, but certainly for this report. The evidence alleges, in a nutshell, that the Kremlin is effectively paying people in this country to push their agenda. That means promoting Putin's propaganda and targeting known critics of the Russian government as well. Some of the agents being bought by Putin are perfectly well aware of what they are doing. Some of them are being bought unwittingly. They don't necessarily know that they're working for a foreign power as such. Now let's take the case of Boris Johnson himself. So he has suppressed this report when it had been cleared by both the Select Committee, which is cross-party, as well as the Intelligence Services and Cabinet Office. Why? Boris Johnson has been known for some years to have had links with those close to Putin, which have made his senior Conservative colleagues very uncomfortable. We also know that he received hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of bribes. Sorry, did I say bribes? I meant donations, within a day or two of announcing that he would not be clearing the report for release. He also went across to a party being held by a Russian oligarch close to the Kremlin to celebrate his general election win last December. The idea that Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister himself, is not one of the very aware agents would beg a belief. One of the key allegations in the evidence is that the Russian state and organised crime operations in the UK have effectively merged. We're all well aware, of course, that there's a lot of dirty Russian money in the country. London, unfortunately, is a hotbed for money laundering. We understand that. Normal criminal activity is what we might have supposed, something we should be doing more about. But this evidence suggests that the two are linked. The money is being taken from the budget and private companies. It's been used to pay Putin and his officials, which is then used to finance their various nefarious projects. Now, reading the report, let's say you were of a mind to want to back Boris Johnson, you don't want to criticise him, and you're actually okay with his puppet master Putin as well. You would just read the report and go, well, hang on a minute, this is just the testimony of a man who's on the run from the Russian government and is slinging mud. Okay, the very simple response to that is this. His testimony, he's not just writing a piece for The Guardian, that's not what's happened here. His evidence was submitted to an intelligence select committee. It has been assessed by British intelligence and our parliamentary select committee. If it's just mudslinging, then the report will say so, because this has been scrutinised by our intelligence services. If it is not just mudslinging, if this is credible, then the report would suggest that as well, in which case, where is it? Why isn't it being released? The only way to know, in a way, is to see the full unredacted report. But in reality, we know that the testimony is credible. We know it because the various members of that select committee were crying out for its release. They were saying this needs to be seen. We know because the report was cleared by everyone that needed to do so, only being blocked by Boris Johnson. We know because Boris Johnson himself has dismissed the report as not containing anything new or of much interest. Where have we heard that before? A certain Donald Trump tried that, didn't he? But if it really was, well, it doesn't really contain anything new or you know, of any consequence, why wasn't it released last November? Why was it suppressed all this time? There are also fears that with Johnson nominating a majority of that committee personally, that he will be able to get them to completely rewrite it. So not only would that mean further delays, but that the original report will not be released at all, at least not under this government. This could actually be worse than a redacted release. Because a redacted release shows Johnson has something to hide, like I say. If he redacts a load of sections, we know those redactions aren't for security implications because it was cleared by the Cabinet Office. And he said that there was nothing of consequence in it. Well, where are all those black lines then? Why are you covering up all the words, Boris, if there's no consequence in them? So no, a redacted release you would smell a massive rat. You would have to be blinkered in the extreme not to know there's something going on here. But if he releases a new report, completely rewrites it and writes all of the damning evidence out of it and just comes up with, you know, a few pages that basically say, oh, well, we looked at everything, we didn't really think any of it was credible, and then release that, then, you know, a lot of people will look at it and go, well, it's not been redacted. This is the report. Oh, it says there's nothing really in it. Yeah, there was nothing in it. So we can only hope that at least one, and it only needs to be one, that one of the Conservative members of this committee have a shred of patriotism and take umbrage at the thought of hiding information about not only past, but an ongoing assault on our nation by a foreign power, because that's what this report represents. So anyway, that's where we're up to at the moment. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.